So we're going to be talking about sleepers. We're going to be talking about potential fades. You know, when I say fade, you don't have to necessarily go someone 0%, but if you know they're going to be 30% owned, maybe you rep them 5-10%. So you under rep them, or you just completely don't play them at all. Talk about value, because that's what's most important. You really want to find players who are going to return the most value, dollars per, or excuse me, points per salary. That's essentially the most important. And then really at the end, I'll talk about game theory. We'll talk about projected ownership, what can differentiate yourself, leverage, what that means, a good process to a way to how to win, essentially, playing DraftKings.
Like how you want to split up your money into the GPP versus cash,
Right,
tournaments
exactly.
wisely, things like that.
And the fact that you should max enter every tournament in order to combat variance.
Yep.
Sports has so much variance. The way you beat the variance is by having as many teams as possible. If you have the max amount of teams, then you have the best chance of winning. The fact is that you're not trying to place on all of your teams. Your goal is to get in the first top 10. The money's so highly at the top. Places 1 through 10. I mean, they get I think 40% of the money of each tournament in places 1 through 10. So your goal is actually to get in the top 10. Whereas a lot of people,
as many of them in the top 10 as possible.
Yeah, exactly. As many of them in this top 10 as possible. Whereas most people, I really feel like they just try to place or just win with all of their lineups, which is a very tragic sort of strategy.
Yeah, there's a lot of missing value for the people who aren't trying to get those top 5, top 10 finishes and get the big guaranteed money. Like if you're
Yeah,
just trying to place, okay, cool, but you want to
yeah,
get more than just your entry money back.
for sure. Your goal is to get first place.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to be doing here, is talking about how we can help people get first place. And with that being said, I mean, so it's week 1. Let's start with sleepers. So anything that sort of stands out to you where people aren't going to be thinking about that could have massive upside?
So right off the bat for QB, I think Haskins could be a sleeper this week. People just kind of look at what he did his rookie year and they kind of see his mediocre stats. He had a pretty average touchdown interception ratio. Just think he wasn't that good. But that doesn't tell his whole story. I think it's some PFF stats that say he had the lowest turnover worthy play rate of any of the rookie QBs, and he also had a very high big play throw rate as well. And whenever you actually look at how his starts were broken down, his first couple ones were pretty bad, but his last 7, he improved on his going through his progressions, improved on his decision making, all of that you want to see on a young QB. And he has a new coaching staff with Ron Rivera and Scott Turner as the OC. And most importantly, they're facing a team with a lot of question marks in the secondary outside of Darius Slay. And they're going to be in a negative game script. So they're going to be passing a lot. And he has some pretty decent weapons to be able to put up some surprising points, I think.
I agree, and his price point is he's one of the cheapest options on the slate. So
Oh,
what
yeah.
that will do for game theory wise is allow you to pay up for Christian McCaffrey, allow you to pay up for elite wide receivers, allow you to pay up for Kittle or whoever you're trying to target. So
Yeah.
So I think that's actually, so that would probably hit within a couple of slots. So that could be sleeper, that could be value.
I guess another sleeper QB that I like Tyrod Taylor. Um,
Yeah.
he's not a guy that I'm expecting to like go out and win you the week, but he's a really safe pick with a safe floor. We know who he is. At best, he's a 3,000-yard passing receiver on 62-ish completion, low turnovers. He knows this offense. He was the backup last year. He played with Anthony Lynn, the head coach in Buffalo, and he's going against what's going to be a pretty bad defense outside of William Jackson III. So I think Tyrod's a pretty safe pick. I wouldn't really play him that much in GPPs, but I would rep him in some cash games just because we know what his floor is, we know what his ceiling is, and he's safe.
And then moving on to running back. So for running back, what type of player or who do you think would be good for sleepers this week?
So they're not going to be the traditional sleepers who are just really, really cheap um, guys with high upside. They're kind of more middle tier price wise, but they're Marlon Mack and Todd Gurley. So the main reason why I like Mack is that I fully expect Jonathan Taylor to take over the backfield before long because he's one of the best college running backs we've seen in a while. But Marlon Mack's 5,300. He knows the offense. They haven't had preseason games. They haven't had as many practices as they usually do. And they're playing Jacksonville. I think they're going to give Marlon Mack all the opportunities that they can to show who he is as a player before eventually transitioning to Jonathan Taylor later on in the season.
True. And I also think that you want to start off the season 1-0, and you're going to start with your veteran, and you're going to start with the guy who knows the offense.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, Jonathan Taylor eventually will take over, most likely.
They drafted him too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, we've seen Marlon Mack put up huge games in the past at his price point. The upside's there, and that is a spot where the field is no. I think he might be like 2% owned, maybe.
He's
Like
going to be very under owned.
maybe
Yeah.
he might be 1% owned.
Yeah. And,
So
and this is early in the season, so we don't know anything at all about what's really going to happen outside of coach speak. So I think now's the time to pretty much take a stand and just be like, yeah, I think Marlon Mack's going to be the leading back week one.
oh
Sure.
yeah, I like your thoughts with that. So for game theory, sort of projected ownership, probably be like 1 to 3% owned, maybe 3%, probably like I would guess like 2%. So it is like you said, we don't know where they're going to go. So they could very easily just go Jonathan Taylor the whole time, or they could go Marlon Mack. So I would probably, for me, I'm going to probably put them on about 10%,
Mm-hmm.
which would give me 10x the field, right? So
Oh yeah.
that's not that much necessarily for my lineups, but it would still give me massive leverage, assuming he crushes value. So I like that pick. And then who else do you like, or what's the second running back that you
My
think?
second guy is Todd Gurley.
Right, you said that. Okay.
So I've been very big on the not trusting Todd Gurley on season long fantasy at all this year because I don't expect his knees to hold up. But his price is too good to pass up right now. We're gonna assume that he's healthy because he hasn't had any games to tear up his knees anymore. And this is the highest over under game of the main slate at 49 points last time I checked. So I want as many shares in the Atlanta and Seahawks offenses that I can get at a good price point. And once again, I don't think Gurley's going to be a very popular pick. I think people are going to go a lot more of Mixon, Eckler, Miles Sanders.
Definitely. I think he will be like 10%. He'll be about that 10% mark where you people sort of think, it could be him, but it's, like you said, his knees, or
Most people who go him are going to be name chasing, I think.
that, or they could just be Atlanta fans, or really just people at the end of the day just also taking the over under.
Mm-hmm.
But with conviction, I'm probably going to go him 20%. So I'm assuming he's going to be about 10% owned, maybe 13, 15 max. So I want to own him more than the field. So I'm going to put him down for about 20%.
Yeah, and we know what a healthy Gurley is. A healthy Gurley is one of the best running backs in the league. Even if he's 80%, he's still going to be better than almost.
Right. And we're still talking about
Uh,
the Falcons where Julio Jones gets like just all the yards for them, and then
and none of the touchdowns.
Right. So I could very easily see Gurley get 3 TDs with like 60
Just
yards.
sniping them, yeah.
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 Okay, let's move on to wide receivers. So wide receiver for sleepers, who are you looking at? Who are you targeting?
So I'm going after the Las Vegas Raiders. It takes me a couple times every time I have to think of their team. With Henry Ruggs and Brian Edwards, they're both rookies. They're both going to be starting wide receivers. They're going against what's going to be probably the worst pass defense in the league in Carolina. Um, Ruggs is, of course, going to be more the speed guy. They drafted him in the first round, first wide receiver taken.
Sure.
But personally, at least for their prices, I kind of lean towards Brian Edwards a little bit as a sleeper. I really liked him coming out in the draft. He's a physical receiver. He was productive in all 4 years at South Carolina, and that was with their questionable quarterback play. So I very much like him. He has the physical traits to be a number one receiver, whereas Henry Ruggs is, while he's an athletic freak, he's more of a deep ball type of receiver.
Okay, so Ruggs, yeah, both of those are okay. So that's interesting. Right there, Ruggs is at that 5,100 price point. Everyone's going Deshaun. That itself could be a pivot.
Mm-hmm.
Or Edwards is 4,200. Everyone's going Deshaun. Pivot. Similar sort of upside.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not necessarily the same, but definitely it's there. We don't actually know that though, right? So this is the thing with week one. How these computers are going to project whatever they're going to project, but we have nothing to project these players on.
All we know is that they're starting and that they have draft capital. Henry Ruggs is a first rounder. Brian Edwards is a third rounder.
Right. And like you said, they're playing an awful secondary.
And the guy who was supposed to be their lead receiver, Tyrell Williams, is out. And I mean, Hunter Renfrow doesn't scare me. I think both these guys are better than him.
And what do you think about Gruden being a non-analytics guy and loving to run the football? Or do you think that's just a narrative that's in people's heads and he's going to unleash Carr? Or how do you think that could play out this week? Do you think it could be some like play action?
I mean, he wants to run the ball. He really does. But the one thing that I really do like about Gruden for his play calling is that they're consistently good at manufacturing yards for their tight ends. He did it the first year with Jared Cook. He did it last year with Darren Waller. And even whenever Darren Waller wasn't out there, they did it with Foster Moreau, who was their fourth-round rookie out of LSU. And he finished with like 4 or 5 touchdowns on the year.
So for me, I think that that's a balanced attack. When the run game's going well, it opens up the pass game. So I think, like you said, those are some great sleepers because everyone's going to have in their mind that they're a run-first team and Darren Waller. And then I think they will be under-owned compared to their upside. So for each of those guys, I mean,
I would just sprinkle them in every now and then.
I'm trying to think of their projected ownership. It'll probably, since they're starting and they're really cheap, it'll probably be like 5% maybe.
If even.
Yeah, if even. Under 10%.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to do 10% for both of those, for both of them. And I may go more on Edwards because his price is better and everyone's going to – I think Ruggs will be just higher owned.
I think Ruggs will be too.
And I think they're virtually – that's really a coin flip. So I might just take the point, take the salary so I can pay up for Christian.
And it helps that I've been hyping up Brian Edwards for you like all week on
Facebook. Yeah, I think I have Brian Edwards on like maybe 75% of my best ball lineups. So I think that's maybe slightly biased by me, kind of confirmation bias or me hoping.
I think he's good. I think he's very good.
He outperforms.
Yeah.
Also, Who else do you like at receiver?
I like Anthony Miller
I
on the
see a
Bears.
name here that I w- was gonna text you about him actually. Um, I really I overweighted him a bit in my best ball, so I see you have Anthony Miller here.
Yeah,
Talk about
yeah.
him.
So I have just red flags everywhere on the Detroit Lions secondary. I don't think they're good. They drafted Jeff Okuda third overall, and it looks like he's not even going to be a starting cornerback in week one, so that doesn't bode well for them. Yeah, they got Desmond Trufant from the Falcons, or formerly the Falcons, in the offseason, but he's a couple years removed from his best days. I mean, this secondary is just going to leak all over the place. Um, and Anthony Miller's cheap. I much prefer Allen Robinson, but I mean, at his price point, he has high upside.
Yeah, I think that's a great pivot. I think Trubisky is going to be one of the highest projected points per salary player. I think people will stack him with AR
Mm-hmm.
and I think Allen Robinson, and I think you should play Allen Robinson. But I agree. I think a good pivot would be paying down for Anthony Miller or stacking both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So game theory wise, I probably am going to roll out some Trubisky squads with Anthony Miller,
Definitely.
and then with AR, and then with both. But I'm probably going to lean heavier towards Anthony Miller because the field will most likely over rep AR.
Robinson.
But I'm not,
Yeah.
but by no means fade Robinson playing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he's pretty chalky. But I think Anthony Miller will be underowned. So
Mm-hmm.
for percentage ownership, I'm probably gonna drill a 20%er for Anthony Miller, uh, and
Yeah.
then
And then
yeah,
I guess like my last little notes on receiver for sleepers is you just got to watch the injury reports.
yeah,
Um, so out of San Francisco, we've been hearing a lot about Brandon Ayuk, their first round pick, and Debo Samuel, who've both been practicing this week, but also been injured and questionable. If one or both of them is out, then Kendrick Burney, however you say his last name,
yeah.
um, he's going to end up being their starting wide receiver for San Francisco, and he is going to be incredibly cheap. And then on a similar note, Mike Evans is once again struggling with a hamstring injury. So just keep an eye out for Justin Watson to kind of fill his role.
So okay, so let's move on to the next section here. Let's go tight end. Who do you like as
So
a
I have two guys here who are very cheap, but in advantageous spots. Chris Herndon of the Jets and Ian Thomas on the Panthers. So Herndon, I mean, when he's been healthy, he's shown flashes of excellence. We've seen what Ryan Griffin did in this role last year. And if you're looking at the injury reports for the Jets, it's not looking pretty. Rashad Perryman's been hurt. Their rookie wide receiver, Denzel Mims, has been struggling with injury. And at this point, it looks like it's going to be Jameson Crowder, Chris Herndon, and Chris Hogan as their top pass catchers. So I just think Herndon has a lot of opportunity and a lot of talent. Ian Thomas, very similarly. Um, Whenever Greg Olson was on the team previously, Ian Thomas normally played pretty well whenever Olson was out. So hopefully now that Olson's gone and on the Seahawks, Thomas just takes that next step forward.
I think you will, and I think with Joe Brady as OC, we're going to see some exotic schemes. Everyone's going to be worrying about what Christian McCaffrey's doing, and I think the other player that's going to be pretty much overlooked a lot is Moore.
Oh yeah, and we'll get to him later. Yeah, yeah.
So for defense, Who do you like for sleepers this week?
I mean, I think defense is pretty much a dart throw in the first place. So my preferred strategy is to go for a really cheap one and hope they do something. So my first one off the bat is Miami. They've completely rebuilt their defense. They paid Byron Jones a lot of money to come and shore up their cornerback two spot, and they're 2K. They're not going to be played a lot. They're going against the Pats, who are going to be heavy favorites. I think they're worth a dart throw.
Yeah, they're actually surprisingly projected pretty high for their, not necessarily for the most points, but like points per salary because of their price point. And
Mhm.
so, and I like you said, I think they will be like owned, I don't know, 2% maybe. And they're playing a quarterback who's learning a new system with new players. I love Cam. I love Cam this season. I think he has high upside. I think that he has a lot of uh, he wants to have, like, shut the haters up, give him the middle finger. He's Cam fucking Newton, man.
Yeah,
So I, I I obviously know that it's kind of terrifying to roster a defense against the Patriots, but at the same time, I mean, for 2,000, that's a punt.
yeah,
They get a fumble recovery for a touchdown, or maybe return a punt for a TD, or get two interceptions. Even if they get 7 or 8 points at 2,000, let's say, they allow you to pay up for a bunch of other players, and
exactly what I was going to say.
yeah, and like you said,
Punting here, getting 7 or 8 points is perfect.
um, okay, so what other defenses do you like?
So I also like Arizona and Seattle.
Okay.
Arizona, what I like about them, they're in the second year of their defensive scheme. I mean, I'm not really that afraid of Jimmy G as a quarterback, if we're being honest. And I think their front office has put in a lot of good work to make their defense stronger after realizing that it's a weakness. And I really, really like how they drafted Isaiah Simmons this year. I think he can really change their defense, even as a rookie. He's pretty much just like a bigger Derwin James, and we've seen what Derwin James can do for the Chargers defense.
So yet again, another very cheap defense could be a sleeper because all you need to get, let's say, 7, 8 points. If they pop off for 13, 14,
Oh yeah, and the 49ers are heavy favorites against them too.
and they're also dealing with some injury
Mhm. Yeah.
noise, noise. Not sure if it's noise, but it's definitely news right now. Okay, so, and the other one you mentioned was Seattle.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is the highest over under game, but I mean, you just got to take some dart throws every now and then. There's going to be a lot of balls thrown around in this game. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for turnovers. Those turnovers can sometimes turn into points. And if this game ends up being with Seattle winning, then Atlanta's going to be having to throw to catch up and be in a negative game script, which is going to lead to sacks, which is going to help our defense.
Definitely. And again, they're cheap. And
Mhm.
surprisingly, looking at projections right now, Miami, Arizona, and Seattle are all within the top 7 points per salary.
Not bad. Okay.
So we just went over sleepers, and basically those are players that we think are going to be low owned with the potential to have big game, big game potential, high
Mhm.
upside. So the next category that we want to go over is potential fades.
Mhm.
So, who at the quarterback position do you think could be a potential fade, or at least you should under own them compared to the field?
So that's exactly where I went with this. Is I didn't go with the potential fade or with the complete overall fade. I went with what you talked about earlier, where you just kind of under own them in comparison to the field.
Right.
And the two QBs that jumped out to me that I think are going to be overowned are Kyler Murray and Derek Carr. So I know that people love Kyler this year. They're really buying into the sophomore year jump that he's going to make, and there's strangely MVP buzz around him. But I think he's too expensive for what he is. I think what they want to be is a running team with a bunch of RPOs and him making quick, fast decisions out to his receivers and Hopkins, Fitz, and Christian Kirk. But at the end of the day, they want to run the ball.
The other quarterback that you were going to under rep?
Derek Carr. Yeah, I know we talked about earlier how Carolina is one of the worst pass defenses in the league, or most likely will be. But to me, he just screams like a trap play. I mean, Derek Carr has an incredibly low upside to me just because he's not a runner. He has a low target depth. And at the end of the day, Gruden wants to run the ball. Like they have Josh Jacobs, and they showed last year that they want to run with him. And they're going to run with him, and they're going to want to run with him again this year.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. I don't think he'll be that highly owned though. Um, but are you gonna, but that is a bit counterintuitive to the receivers you liked.
I
So
know.
so essentially, no, it's fine. So essentially, um, you probably won't be stacking Carr,
No,
Edward, and Ruggs.
no,
I
not at
just
all.
think that one of them could have a good game. Like
Exactly.
and I agree. I could see Carr throw for 200 yards, 120 of which goes to one of those receivers.
Hmm.
So I think that's what that
And most of those yards come off of like one massive chunk play,
right
especially if it's Ruggs that ends up getting it.
for sure. Next, for potential fades, we're gonna be talking about running back. What do you think?
So my first one is Antonio Gibson. I know he's the darling of the offseason with where he was drafted into Washington, Geis being released, them getting rid of Adrian Peterson, but he's going to be the definition of a chalky play this week. I think he's at 4K on DraftKings.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
is.
people are going to play him a ton, and he's going to be in a timeshare with J.D. McKissick, Peyton Barber, and Bryce Love. Pretty much on the only time I'm going to be playing him is when I'm trying to make a lineup that has Lamar Jackson and McCaffrey on it. So then I can slam those two and then put Gibson in there and then hopefully get some good mid-tier wide receivers.
Sure, and I'm with you on that. I think like don't fade him completely, right?
Yeah,
Just
yeah, just under rep.
under rep him because again, he's a rookie and he's in a
He
committee.
wasn't even a running back in college. He was a wide receiver.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that scares me about him is that he doesn't have a lot of reps at this position. He's learning something new.
And then who else? What other running back do you think could be a potential fade or under owned?
I like Aaron Jones as an under own. He was just incredibly efficient last year. He's a heavy favorite for touchdown regression. I think he's a little overpriced going into this week. Minnesota's traditionally a pretty strong defense. I know they lost a lot of players on their secondary, and then Everson Griffin in their defensive line. But I trust Mike Zimmer to coach him up well and have a good, strong team. And that's not even taking to account the investments that this team has made into running back by taking A.J. Dillon in the second round to be that ground and pound two down running back. And they still have Jamal Williams. I just think it's going to be a little bit too much of a timeshare for him to hit his value. That goes right into my wide receivers.
Okay.
So DeAndre Hopkins and Keenan Allen. Uh,
Yep.
these are both just under reps for me.
Okay.
Hopkins is just the shiny new toy in that offense. There's too many mouths to feed on it. Um, let's be honest here. Richard Sherman's gonna shadow him, isn't he?
Probably, I would. I'd put him on him.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I I think it's going to be more difficult for Hopkins to hit value.
Again, that just goes back to the whole Gibson thing with no time with your new team. Obviously, Obviously, he's sort of like Cam Newton this year, where he wants to flick the haters off and kind of be laughing at Bill O'Brien for trading him for David Johnson.
Hmm.
But I'm sure eventually, over time, he'll get more used to the offense. But week one, I'm with you.
Yeah, and then similarly for Keenan Allen, I mean he's on a run first team. He's going to be covered by William Jackson III, who's a very very good cornerback, and it just goes back to volume. He's not going to be getting enough of the passes that he needs to be able to do well. And it looks like Mike Williams might be out this week. So if he's out, then that might push Keenan Allen to be the outside receiver instead of playing the slot where he's at his best. So that's the biggest problem with Keenan Allen this year is he doesn't have Phillip Rivers anymore. Yeah, Rivers was terrible, but Rivers doesn't care. He's going to throw the ball as much as he wants to. Terod's not going to do that. Terod's going to be smart.
Talking about where were we? Okay, tight ends. Let's
Tight
talk
end.
about tight end fades.
So my two tight end fades are Austin Hooper and Gronk. So the main reason why I'm fading Hooper is entirely because of the new offense that he's on based off of what he was on last year. So
Hmm,
last year, whenever he was on Atlanta, no, so Atlanta targeted tight ends at an incredibly high rate last year.
right.
Not by scheme choice or anything like that, but because he was open and because their defense was bad and they needed to catch back up in games.
Yes,
And I think Hooper's price almost entirely reflects how he did last year.
absolutely.
I don't think it accounts at all in the fact that he is going into an offense run by Kevin Stefanski, who was with Minnesota as the OC in the past, where their run pass split is going to be a lot closer to 50-50.
They have Nick. They have Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
Mm-hmm. So they have two very, very good runners there. And then they're going up against a good defense. They're going up against Baltimore. That's not easy. My other tight end fade is Gronk. And this has entirely to do with the Arians offense. What exactly were we saying last year about OJ Howard? Oh, Arians has never had a tight end like this. There's never been one as athletic in this type of offense. They're going to throw the ball so much. How well did that go for us? Did not go well. Gronk,
Yeah, I would still say that like OJ Howard's probably more physical specimen than Gronkowski. And Gronkowski, yeah, he had a year off, but I mean, he's in
I,
the 30s.
I think at this point in his career, I think Gronk is going to be more of a blocking tight end who occasionally goes out and catches passes. He's not going to be a move tight end.
Yeah, he reminds me sort of like Jason Witten in the later years of his career.
Mhm. Which, I mean, Gronk, him being just a blocking tight end, and he's still going to be one of the filthiest blocking tight ends out there because
Oh,
he's
for sure.
incredible at it and he's going to be a game changer there. But I think we're going to see a different type of Gronk this year.
Move on to the next section here for sports game theory. We're going to be talking about value plays for each position. So, value plays for quarterback. Who do you think has good value?
So we've kind of hit on it a little bit earlier with Anthony Miller and Allen Robinson talking, but Trubisky. I don't like him long term. I know you don't either. But the Lions, like we talked about, are very, very young at cornerback. They're not even going to be starting their third overall pick. And I mean, yeah, I guess it's recency bias, box score chasing, but he's really performed well against them in the past. Like
Yeah.
in his career, Trubisky, not a good quarterback, cannot throw left, is completing 75% of his passes for 866 yards, 9 touchdowns, and an interception.
Yep.
I mean, I like that. And I think the biggest thing that people are forgetting about Trubisky is that he's actually a pretty decent mobile quarterback too.
Yeah,
He's got
yeah.
some legs. He can run.
That's what I was gonna say. Is like he can sneak up on you.
Yeah.
So I
Uh,
think I think he's gonna be super underowned. It's tough for me to project how his ownership will be. I could see it being as low as like 5%, 4%, because the narrative is that Nick Foles should be the starter, and he's only starting because they invested so much in him. Or I could also
ding,
see
ding,
him
ding.
being like maybe 10% owned because, like you said, he is in a super plus matchup. He
Mhm.
destroys his team. His price, he's pretty cheap for compared to his upside. He is one of the higher points per salary players. So it's really tough for me to project his ownership. If I were to guess, I'm going to go from 2 to 10%. I know that's kind of a wide range. I hate that. Um, but that's where I'm thinking he's going to be in the 2 to 10% area. Therefore, I want to over rep him. So I'm thinking he's going to be about on 16%,
16?
17% of SGT lineups,
Yeah.
maybe 20. I'm assuming. Well, I mentioned 30% for Miller at 25% AR, so probably it would make sense to stack him. I may have them naked on a few teams, so I'll probably go
Yeah.
Trubisky actually 20%.
So that's the thing about Trubisky, and this is one of those things where since we didn't have preseason or anything like that, we get to take advantage of these week one prices.
Right.
And since DraftKings was so nice as to make these prices like a month ago, Trubisky is 5,400 for a starting quarterback against a bad defense.
And he's in the same system, and his two receivers both are returning from last year. He's playing
Mm-hmm.
in the dome, so there's no weather effects. He's playing a team he's crushed in the past. So,
Yeah,
and he also he wants to put the middle finger up, give
he
people the finger.
has to. I mean, look at what the guys drafted after him got paid this offseason, and they didn't even pick up his option.
Oh, yeah, that's got to be fucking
Yeah,
brutal.
yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah,
So not only is he gonna want to fucking ball out, he's gonna want to put up a number.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so who else for quarterback do you like?
Oh, the guy with a bunch of the MVP buzz, Josh Allen. He's
Mm,
facing the Jets, which is a terrible, terrible defense. He has the rushing upside, which we like.
yep.
His team, I guess his front office, added in Stephon Diggs in the offseason while keeping John Brown and Cole Beasley and Dawson Knox, who was a pretty good rookie tight end last year. And I mean, Josh Allen's improved each year. Yeah, his accuracy isn't as amazing as we want it to be, but he's going to complete passes. He's going to make winning plays. And their OC, Brian Dable, I think he runs a very smart offense, and it's plays into the strengths of his team.
Okay, so we're talking about running back value this week. Who do you think has good value at running back?
So on this, you got some pretty good options. I think you got Joe Mixon, Chris Carson, Austin Eckler, and Josh Jacobs.
Yep.
All of them are relatively around the same price point. They're going to be the undisputed guys on their team, and they're in offenses that are going to pretty much going to make them the three down back. Out of those, in my opinion, Mixon and Josh Jacobs are the favorite plays. I think Mixon is an incredibly talented back, and I think he's due for some very positive touchdown regression this year. Yeah.
I like Mixon. I think he's gonna have a good game for sure.
And then Josh Jacobs goes back to what we've been talking about a lot with the Raiders.
Yeah.
Um, and then the fact that, I mean, he doesn't really have anyone on his team to really challenge him for carries or catches
Yeah.
out of the backfield. He's a great play, in my opinion.
He's gonna be highly owned. So if you're thinking about fading him, don't. I
Yeah.
think that could be fatal. I mean, he could very easily get 30 points, be 25% owned, and if you fade him, well, you're going to be looking at week 2 because you just lost week 1.
Yeah. And then one of my favorite plays for running back this week is Miles Sanders. I think he's probably going to be a pretty chalky play based off of his price point.
Yeah.
He's so good. He's an incredible back. Like once they actually started giving him a starting running back's level of carries last year, he performed every single week. And it's not just rushing. His receiving ability is incredibly underrated. And we
Yeah.
lucked out so much because Phillies in the past kind of like to do a little running back by committee. So I was getting a little worried that they were going to assign Adrian Peterson or Devontae Freeman or something like that and just mess up this beautiful thing they have with Sanders. Looks like we're going to luck out and just get a heavy dose of Sanders with some sprinkles of Boston Scott every now and then.
What do you like for value?
So wide receiver, there's a lot of options here. Ignore my cat; he wants attention. Um, so first off, I think you need to get exposure to the highest over/under game of the main slate in Atlanta and the Seahawks. So whether that's DK Metcalf at 5,800 or Tyler Lockett at 6,500,
Sure.
you need to go one of them. Personally, I like DK Metcalf a little more, just because of the price point, and then Calvin Ridley and Julio at 6,100 and 7,700
Okay.
respectively.
Yep.
You have to play them, at least one of them, I think.
Definitely. I mean, Vegas is like one of the most important factors when determining your lineups. I think, especially novice players, will overlook Vegas over unders, and at the end of the day, they have very bright lights for a reason.
Yeah,
They're really good at what they do.
which we've seen many times.
Yeah. Um,
Uh, so then for the rest of the wide receivers, I kind of split it up into three different tiers where we have cheap, mid tier, and not quite the stud level price.
yeah.
So at cheap, we have Hollywood Brown at 5,100.
Yeah.
I mean, his rookie year was pretty boomer bust, but he's a first round pick wide receiver. He has speed. He's playing in a very, very good offense with a very, very good QB who has progressed each year that he's in the league in Lamar Jackson,
Right.
and his passing's gotten better. I I like Hollywood Brown a lot this week. And then also in this tier, who we've already talked about earlier, is Deshaun Jackson at 4,900. But
Yeah.
we've covered that in our fades pivots because of his high ownership projection. Um, in the mid tier, we have Terry McLaurin, T.Y. Hilton, and Odell Beckham, which are at 5,600, 5,800, and 5,900 respectively. I
Yeah.
think Odell Beckham at 5,900 is just disrespectful for what he is as a receiver.
Absolute joke.
It's just, to me, it's taking into account too much of how he played last year whenever he was coming off of a hernia or playing with a hernia. I think that's just wrong. And I fully expect him to destroy that price level.
Me
And
too.
similarly, T.Y. Hilton. I mean, he was going from Jacoby Brissett to Phillip Rivers, who was not afraid to throw the ball, despite the fact that Ty is going to be double or triple covered. He's not going to care. He's going to throw it to him. Ty is great. He's incredible. He's playing a terrible defense, a terrible team in Jacksonville. I like Ty a lot. And then at our not quite stud level price, we have a couple guys we've already talked about in Allen Robinson and Stephon Diggs at 6,500 and 6,400. I think they're both great plays. Both going up against mediocre pass defenses with QBs who know how to find their good receivers.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then on the opposite side from Allen Robinson, we have Kenny Golladay at 6,200, which if you look at what his season-long ADP is, that price point makes no sense. He's going as a top 10 receiver in season-long. I think he's underpriced here. And I think it's taking into account a little too much of how poorly the Lions played last year after Stafford went down. Whenever Stafford was playing last year, It's not like he was playing like MVP level, but Stafford was playing at a non-Lamar, non-Mahomes MVP level. Incredible. So the only problem with Galladay this week is he's popped up on injury reports towards the end of the week. So that's just something you need to watch. And if he's not good to go, then we got Marvin Jones at 5,500 just sitting there begging us to play him. And lastly, there's DJ Moore in there,
Yes, I'm huge on
which
him this year. Huge. I mean, I think we both are. Um, Absolutely huge on the guy. I think with Teddy Bridgewater, he's gonna want to find his guy. I think that's gonna be his guy. Everyone's gonna be focusing on Christian McCaffrey. I think DJ Moore is gonna be a top 10 receiver this year. Absolutely, maybe even top five. Um, so especially full point PPR. So I like him as well.
yeah, I mean, and like we kind of touched on earlier with Ian Thomas, DJ Moore and the Joe Brady offense should be a lot of fun to watch.
Oh man,
I do not expect this team to be good. I think they're going to be fun.
for value at tight end.
So my number one tight end is going to be Mark Andrews this week. I think that he's an incredible value. It would not surprise me at all if he's the top 2 tight end this year and is on the Kelsey price tier within a couple weeks. He's incredible. No team targets the tight end like Baltimore does last year. And he lost his competition with Hurst leaving for Atlanta.
Yeah, that's true. That
So now it's him and Nick Boyle, who's primarily going to be a blocker.
I mean, he should be. The guy's the biggest meathead I've ever seen.
Yeah. So to me, Mark Andrews is just incredible value at his price point.
I like that a lot. I think so do you think he'll be kind of chalky and then you're going to overrep him? Or,
Oh, I'm going to overrep him. I think people are going to be chasing Kittle.
oh, so I think, yeah, overrep for sure. Field's probably going to have him under 20%, probably in that 9 to 15% range. So Racky's going to go him 25%. And I'm not sure what SGT is going to do. What do you think? What percentage do you think you're going to put him at?
Closer to 30.
Wow, that's super bullish.
I really like him this week. I think that his price point is just far lower than it needs to be. Because if we're being honest, he is the number one receiving option on their offense.
Yeah, I'm gonna up him too. You just convinced me. I'm going him 30%. So SGT, both of us combined, we got him at 30% this week.
Agreed. So then the other tight ends that I like, I do like Hunter Henry. Kind of like what we hit on earlier with Keenan Allen, where there's not all the volume to go around in the world. But if Mike Williams doesn't play, then that's, I think, going to be pushing Hunter Henry into more of those middle of the field zones where he can catch the ball, where Tyrod's going to be more willing to throw it. For tight end, I have one of my favorite guys, Mike Gesicki.
Yeah.
Down Miami. You know I love him.
Yeah, you're big on him this year.
I've been big on him since he was coming out. Like he pretty much has like the exact same measurements and athleticism numbers as OJ Howard whenever he came out, but he's just been suffering down in Miami.
Got Fitz magic.
Exactly. So towards the end of last season, he started to show that connection with Fitzmagic. I know the offense is going to be a little bit different with Chan Gailey running it, but I'm still going to think that they're going to see what he did last year whenever he got to essentially play that big slot role and just let him go out there and ball. And also, this gets back to our little news versus noise thing a little bit.
Right.
Whenever they rolled out their depth chart this year, he's not the starting tight end. They had the run blocking tight end Dalton Smith as the starter. So
Who the fuck is Dalton Smith?
Exactly. He's a run blocking guy. So to me, that means that their base formation is going to be more running base, which is good because that's going to throw everyone off the scent to Gesicki. The D and special teams for
Yeah.
this. So I just have two in here.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, I kind of like the pay down options. So Indianapolis is just the go-to one here. They're going to be playing a pretty terrible Jacksonville team who doesn't have a starting running back really. They have some undrafted free agent rookie out of an FCS school as their starting running back for
Yeah.
week one. And then Chris Thompson, who's pretty much only a third down back. They
Right.
do have good receivers, but it's a negative game script for Jacksonville all the way along. I just think Indy's going to easily take care of business there.
Okay. And
And
who else?
the second one's Buffalo. For all
Yeah.
the things that we've been talking
Yeah.
about with the Jets, how
Yeah.
terrible they are,
Yeah.
um, how terrible Adam Gase is
Yeah.
at everything, how they don't have how their receiving options are Jamison Crowder, Chris Hogan, and then Herndon for week one. It's not a good matchup, I think. So Buffalo is kind of the pay up option, I think.
Okay. So that's pretty much a wrap on the different sections that we went over: sleepers, potential fades, or under own, under rep, value plays. And now we're just going to talk about some more things in general. So for the people watching, we didn't necessarily mention the elite players like McCaffrey, Lamar Jackson, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, uh, you know, Godwin, Devontae Adams, because it should be understood that you're going to be playing them to
Mm-hmm.
some degree. Um, if you have questions, you can leave them in the comments. Ask us how much percentage you're going to put them, or whether, if you have a certain lineup that you've set up and you want to know whether you should put this player here or you should pivot to this player. We'll get back to you in the YouTube comments. We'll respond, but it should just basically be known that you have to put those players on your team. It could be any of them. And on any day, really. And so we're not going to sit here and be like, oh, yeah, you should fade Christian McCaffrey. I mean, that's not a profitable – that's not going to give you plus expected value on your return of money playing DraftKings. You're going to be one of the losers over time. So that's not a winning strategy. So I just want it to be known, and I think you want it to be known, that we're not saying that we don't like them, and we're not saying that we do like them. We're saying that you have to play them.
Yeah. If there's ever a time that we don't like them, we will tell you. What's leverage?
Leverage is essentially how much, like if a player is, let's say, 10% owned by the field and you have them 33% owned, then you have 23% leverage. It's the difference between how much you own the player and how much the field has them.
So in
So
theory, you want to have like the guys who boom, you want to have a higher leverage value on them.
exactly, that's how you win. So if someone is 5% owned and he scores 30 and is probably going to be on the winning lineup, and you have him 20%, you're going to have a good day.
I think that covers the wide receivers I wanted to touch on, unless there's any you have thoughts on.
No, I just want to highlight Deshaun, and that
Yeah.
he's this sort of love-hate this week, and that you totally see him being the guy, being the play, fully hitting value, exceeding value. Also could see him doing awful, or not awful, but essentially him being priced at 4,900 is why he's priced at 4,900 type deal.
Exactly.
And so he could be a trap but he also could be explosive and do really well. So I think the trouble with week one, this is honestly, I'll admit it. I mean, he's a big question mark for me. I still haven't decided whether I like him, whether I want to under rep him. But just from my contrarian game theory type play, considering that, again, he's so dependent upon a Hail Mary, and he's not going to be the guy that gets you 7-8 receptions for 80 yards. I'm going to under rep him.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just going to throw it out there. It's probably going to be on 10% of Racky's lineups. I don't know what SGT is going to come out with for overall ownership. What do you think your ownership on him would be?
So I think we kind of said the field's going to be going like 25 or 30%.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that range. I'm probably going to go more in 20% range.
20.
So a slight under rep.
Slight under rep. And I'm probably going to be – well, I mean, he did have some weird off-season crap going on with, like, hating on Jews or something. So
yeah.
I don't know.
I'm pretty much going to use him as not a lineup builder, but something that I use to make lineups work.
Kind of like you said with Gibson, trying to slam in, put McCaffrey in. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, he's not going to be like one of the building blocks. Like, for example, I view Allen Robinson and DK Metcalf as building blocks at wide receiver.
Sure.
I don't view Deshaun Jackson in the same light.
He's more of like a filler for the teams where you want to pay up for elite players.
Exactly, yeah. Like if I want to pay up for QB or tight end, I'll put him on there.
And I think so for the users out there who are not as experienced, what can happen – wow, that was crazy. I feel like that was literally like fucking –
like right outside your window?
Yeah, man. Like Zeus just fucking shot a thunderbolt down from the heavens. Like, holy shit.
That's a good omen, right?
I don't know. Now we're talking about Deshaun, and they're fucking shooting lightning bolts. Like, is he about to strike lightning? I mean,
he is quick.
Is that a sign? Do I go from 10% owning him to 40% slamming him? The fuck just happened? No, but going back to your point where you're saying that he's sort of like a filler for elite players, something that happens often for people in Draftkings is they take that mentality, which totally it's very plausible, makes sense, and I think you should do that. But let's say you put them on 4 teams, and that's sort of like your premise is that, okay, each team with Deshaun Jackson is going to have McCaffrey or Lamar. Well, if those are your only McCaffrey and Lamar teams and Deshaun busts, then all those teams are donezo.
Yeah.
So for the people that are maybe not who don't have as much experience playing DraftKings, you don't want to overly leverage a player to another player in that sense. So I agree with you on that strategy. However, I just want to make sure that it's known that not all of the Deshaun Jackson lineups being coupled with Lamar and Christian would be the best in the event something bad happens. So I guess what I'm saying is definitely do that. I think that's a good strategy. But at the same time, maybe like 50% of those teams, you have Deshaun with McCaffrey and with Lamar. But then the other 50% with McCaffrey and Lamar, you go those sleepers that we talked about, such as the Raiders receivers, or maybe you sprinkle some Gibson. Or
you do Deshaun with like Michael Thomas or something like that.
Right.
So the whole point of this that you're trying to get to is that you don't want to limit your variance.
Yes.
The way that you win is you have the maximum amount of variance among your teams and among your squads.
Yeah,
whenever you lock in players like that so that they only fit together on those specific lineups, you're shooting yourself in the foot and you're handicapping yourself. It doesn't work.